Hello everybody, welcome to Sane Game Studios. I'm Sane, I'm an amateur game developer. Today on Gamemaker Tutorials, I'm going to be taking a look at wall mounting. I covered wall mounting a little bit in my state machine tutorial, but it wasn't a tutorial on wall mounting, it was a tutorial on state machines, and then I just used wall mounting as an example on the state machine, like what state machines are capable of doing. So I figured I would do a proper tutorial on wall mounting, just so that you guys can get a little bit more information on it, because I did get quite a bit of feedback on the wall mounting mechanic. So I'm going to be doing this a little bit differently than how I did it in my wall mounting tutorial. Well, in my state machine tutorial. And the way it's going to be different is in that tutorial, I was just seeing whether or not I was up against a wall. And if I was up against a wall, I was seeing whether or not I was hitting a key in the same direction that the wall is in. And if so, I was mounting it, which works great. You can use that even for tile sets, for tile collisions, but it only works if you want to be able to mount every single wall. So in this tutorial, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be grabbing the ID instance. Well, the ID of whichever instance of a wall that the player wants to mount to. And then I'm going to be checking to see whether or not it's mountable. And I'm going to be flagging it as either mountable or unmountable through a variable that I'm going to be declaring inside of the object. And then I'm going to be able to adjust that variable to decide whether or not it is mountable. And this is great for situations where, like, if you want some walls to be mountable but some aren't, you don't have to have two separate objects. You just change the flag. Or if you want a wall to, like, let's say you have a wall that's mountable, but then something in your game causes it to be like covered with ice or a slippery surface or something, and you no longer want to be mounting it. That's why we're going to be doing a mountable variable, because if you cover a wall with ice and you no longer want it mountable while it's covered with ice, you just change that variable to false. It is no longer mountable. It can no longer be mounted. So the first thing I'm going to be doing, like I do in all my tutorials, I'm just going to be going over the project as it stands. It is honestly not much. It is a very basic platformer. It doesn't even have a state machine yet. We will be introducing that throughout the tutorial, and it's just some basic platformer code. If you know platformer code or you just don't care to watch this, you can go ahead and skip to the next timestamp where I'll actually be getting into the tutorial itself. So to show off the project as it stands right now, I have a handful of sprites. Right, so here's my falling sprite. And actually the most important thing to notice about my sprites is the way that I have my collision mask set up. I haven't set to manual, and I use these numbers to put the collision mask in the exact same spot on every single sprite. So if I were to go look at my wall mount, the collision mask is set to the exact same position here. And then if you were to look at this frame, the collision mask is also set so that it perfectly lines up with the edge of the sprite. And I'm doing this because I have pixel perfect collisions, and I know that my sprite is going to be perfectly up against the wall. So I want to make sure that the sprite itself is animated in such a way that it looks like I am perfectly up against the wall. So this is my wall mounting sprite, and it is what I use to actually mount the wall. And then I'm going to be running a animation end check, and I'm going to be swapping to this sprite where he just stays on the wall, because I don't want this sprite to just be looping forever the whole time that I'm on a wall. So I'm going to play this sprite once. Once the animation ends, I'm going to swap over to this sprite. Other than that, I have a single room. It just looks like this, a super basic platformer. I'm actually going to go to this layer, and I'm going to put in some more walls. And in this tutorial, we are going to get up here. Just by going over here, just jump, 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 however many jumps it takes, and we are going to get up there. Just to play it safe, I'm just going to make that really big. Oh, I also have viewport set up. I have viewport 0 on, and I just have it set to object following for O player, and then I have my border set to put the player in the center of the screen. This is not how I would do camera following. This is just how I set it up for this video. If you want more information on how to do a proper camera following, I have a tutorial on that on my channel. I have an O wall object, but it has no code, so it's not worth looking at yet. Finally, I have my O player object. I'm just going to delete these state machine variables. I'll be recreating them, but I'll recreate them in the tutorial. I am declaring my variables for getting my player input. I'm going to get rid of those underscores because they screw me up every time. I'm declaring my variables for calculating my horizontal and vertical speed. And here I am declaring my variables for calculating my horizontal and vertical speed. And then I have an X scale variable, and I'm using that to flip my image. And I'll show you guys, you'll understand by the end of the tutorial why I've stored that in a variable instead of just straight up using image X scale equals sine HSP. And then finally I have a Boolean that I have set to grounded. My Boolean for grounded I've set to false, and then we are using that to determine whether or not we are currently on the ground. Finally, if I go to my step event, again, delete all those. First thing I am doing is I am just getting player input, and then I'm using my key right minus key left to determine what direction the player currently wants to move in, and then I'm setting my horizontal speed by multiplying my walk speed by the direction I want to move in. If I am grounded, so if I'm on the ground and I hit the up key, I am minusing my jump height off of my vertical speed. And then I am adding gravity to my vertical speed every single frame regardless. And then, if place meeting, x plus horizontal speed, y o wall, which means that I am going to be colliding with the wall the next time that I move horizontally. I am checking to see if I am not place meeting at x at my horizontal position plus half my horizontal speed. And if this is true, which means I'm not going to be hitting it at half my horizontal speed, I am halving my horizontal speed and then adding it to my X position. And what that is doing is it's giving me pixel perfect collisions. And then finally, I'm setting my horizontal speed to 0. I'm doing the same thing here on my vertical speed. My current vertical position plus my vertical speed, and then halving my vertical speed, and then halving it, and then adding it to my current Y position, setting my vertical speed to 0. The only difference is I'm also setting grounded to true because it means I'm standing on the ground. But if this is not true, I'm setting grounded to false, which means I'm currently up in the air. And then here I am just committing to my movement. And then if my horizontal speed does not equal 0, I am setting my X scale variable to equal sine HSP, and then finally my image X scale equals X scale. And then for animating, if I am on the ground and if my horizontal speed does not equal 0, my sprite index is going to equal sPlayer walk, because I'm on the ground and I am moving. If I'm on the ground and I am not moving, I'm setting my sprite index to be sPlayer idle. Finally, if I am not on the ground and if my vertical speed is greater or less than 0, which means that it is negative, which means I am moving upwards in the vertical direction, it means I'm jumping. I'm setting my sprite index to be sPlayer jump. Otherwise, it means vertical speed is greater than or equal to 0, which means I've either hit the top of my the top of my jump or I am moving back downwards. I'm setting my sprite index to be sPlayer fall. And then if I run this right now, oh, typo. That's why it didn't work. So, as you can see, it is a very basic platformer, and I cannot mount walls, but we're going to fix that in this tutorial. We are going to start mounting walls. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new script, and I'm going to create a script for animation end. So I'm going to go script. I'm going to call this utility because I'm going to be using it for just utility scripts, and function animation end. And I'm going to say if image index is greater than or equal to image number minus 1, return true, else return false. And what this is going to do is it's going to take my current image index, so the current frame that I am on in my current animation, and it is going to compare it to the total amount of frames in that animation. And then so image number, if you have one frame in your image index, so if you have one frame in your sprite, then image number is going to equal 1, but that frame is frame 0. So that's why I'm minus 1 off of it. So if my image index is greater than or equal to the total number of frames, I'm going to say that my animation has ended. So true. Otherwise, false. And there's a reason why I am bringing in this script. I figured I'd get it out of the way. So next I'm going to go to my create event, and I'm going to build my state machine. So I'm going to go enum player state default wall mount wall jump, and then state equals player state dot default. And the next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be declaring all of the variables that I'm going to need for my my wall mounting and wall jumping mechanics. So first thing I'm going to need on wall, and it is going to equal no one. I'm going to on wall direction, and it is going to equal 0. Wall jump timer, and it is going to equal 25. And wall jump height is going to equal 5. And the reason why I am creating a wall jump height is because I don't want to jump my full jump height. Moving horizontally, I am going to, when I mount a wall and I jump off a wall, essentially I'm jumping horizontally. So I don't want to jump quite as high. And if you want to get really fancy, you might also want to move faster, but I'm not going to bother doing that. It's going to work just fine and look just fine without that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my state machine. So I'm going to go switch state one, two, three, four. Region default case player state dot default break and region. And that's just going to create a nice and tidy wall mount state. Well, a nice and tidy state machine. So now that we have the default state, we can start to create the conditions for changing our state. So in my default state, all I need to do is to figure out whether or not I want to wall mount. I'm going to be changing my sprite index right here in the default state. So because of that, I want to be doing this after my animation code, because I don't want my animation code to overwrite my sprite change. Because even though you change states, it is still going to run through the rest of this state on the current frame in which you change states. So I'm going to go way down here to the bottom, and I'm going to say if not grounded, which means I'm not on the ground, on wall equals instance place x plus key right minus key left y o wall. So what I am doing is like this line is actually doing a few things for me. One, it is grabbing the ID of the instance of O wall that I wish to mount onto, and then I'm storing it inside of this variable. So I'm not just looking for O wall, I am looking for a very specific instance of O wall, grabbing its ID, storing it in this variable, and then we're going to manipulate that afterwards. And then this right here, because one thing I want is if I meet a wall and I'm in the air, I don't want to just automatically wall mount. I want to give the player the ability to tell the game that they want to wall mount. So what this is doing is it's doing that. So if I am pressing a key in... So if I am pressing a key in the direction of the wall that I wish to mount, then this variable will be filled with the ID. Otherwise, it's going to return no one. So this one line not only grabs the ID of the wall, but it also determines whether or not the player wants to be wall mounting. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be looking to see if an ID has been stored inside that variable. So if on wall does not equal no one. So if on wall does not equal no one, that means that we have found a wall, the player wants to mount it, and now we have to check to see whether or not it is mountable. So to do that, I'm actually going to go into my objects. I'm going to go to O wall, and I'm going to go to variable definitions. I'm going to add a new one, and I'm going to call it mountable. And I'm going to set this to be a Boolean and default it to true, because I just want all walls to be mountable by default, and then I will decide whether or not they are not mountable. So if on wall does not equal no one, and on wall dot mountable, and I can safely put this here, because if this condition is not true, Gamemaker will not even look at this condition. So if on wall does not equal no one, it means there's an ID in on wall. It is then going to look at the mountable variable and figure out whether or not it is currently mountable. And if it is, we can go ahead and initialize wall mounting. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go on wall direction, so we can get the direction of the wall, and it is going to equal key right minus key left. Because we figured out here that that's the direction of the wall, so we're just going to punch that in right there, and boom. Next, I'm going to be setting my image index to equal 0, and that is because if I am on like frame 3 of my current animation and I transfer it to a new animation, it will start on frame 3. So I'm going to just zero out my image index so I know I am starting from frame 0 of my next sprite. I'm going to go sprite index equals S player wall mount. And then finally I'm going to go state equals player state dot wall mount. So now I am seeing if I am not on the ground, if I have found an instance of O wall to mount to, if that wall is mountable, I am declaring a couple things that will help me in my state transition, and then finally I'm just changing my state machine. So I can collapse that now, and I can go hashtag region wall mount end region case player state dot wall mount break. And then I'm going to need a couple of inputs because I want to be able to unmount from the wall in two different ways. So I'm going to need key up, and it is going to equal keyboard check pressed VK up, and then key down is going to equal keyboard check pressed VK down. Those are the only two directions that I'm going to need for the sake of this state. So I actually don't need to be even updating the values of the other input variables. So I'm not even going to put them in here. And finally, I'm going to say if, well, not finally, but I'm going to say if key down state equals player state dot default. And that's just going to have the player fall, but it's also going to allow them to immediately remount the wall while they are falling, so they can fall to a different height on the wall if they wish. If key up, which means I want to jump, X scale equals negative on wall direction. And that is because in my default state, I am using my X scale variable to figure out my image X scale, to flip my sprite one way or the other. And I want to make sure that it is going to be facing the right direction after the wall jump state has expired. And then image index equals 0. Sprite index equals S player wall jump. VSP equals negative wall jump height. And state equals player state dot wall jump. And then the reason why I'm doing this is the same reason why I did it in my default state when transitioning to my wall mount state. And then I'm setting my VSP to have my height stored in it before I change states, so that I'm only doing it once and I don't need to run a check to see whether or not I've done this yet. So I'm not adding my wall jump height to my vertical speed every single frame in the wall jump state. I'm just going to do it once here, and then in the wall jump state I can just apply gravity. And then finally I'm just going to change my state. But since I am doing this, anything that I want to do with animation needs to happen before this. So here I'm going to say if animation end sprite index equals S player wall stick. And that is so that when this animation is done playing, so I have hit this frame, it's just going to run this. And I think that's all I need for my wall mounting state. So I've created my transition into my wall jump state. So now I'm going to go ahead and build my wall jump state. I'm going to go region wall jump. End region case player state dot wall jump break. So in this state, the first thing I want to be doing is I created a variable in my create event called wall jump timer, and it equals 25. And actually, I'm going to go back to my wall mount state, and right here I'm going to go wall jump timer equals 25, just to make sure that it's always going to equal 25 every single time that I enter the wall jump state. And then once I'm in the wall jump state, every single frame that I'm in this state, I want to minus 1 off of that value. So I'm going to go wall jump timer minus minus. And I'm going to say if wall jump timer is less than or equal to 0, state equals player state dot default. And all this is going to do is it's going to prevent the player from having horizontal control of the player character. So if they jump off the wall, they can't immediately hold the arrow key towards the wall and use the height from the wall jump to climb the wall, because that can be rather game breaking and it also just looks terrible and it's unrealistic. If you're going for that kind of feel for your game, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not what I want to do for this project. So I have the wall jump timer to prevent that. And since I am setting my state, my sprite in my wall mount state, and when I am done my wall jump animation, I just want to transition into my falling animation. I'm going to say if animation end sprite index equals s player fall. And that's just going to transition seamlessly into the falling animation once my wall jumping animation has finished. Next, I'm going to deal with my vertical and horizontal speed. So I'm going to go VSP plus equals graph. And I'm able to do this because I've already minused my jump height off of my vertical speed. And then we go HSP equals walk speed multiplied by negative on wall direction. And the reason why I'm doing walk speed multiplied by negative on wall direction is because I want to be moving away from the wall, and on wall direction is always going to give me a 1 or a negative 1 depending on the direction of the wall. And if the wall is in the positive direction, it's going to be positive 1, which means I want to move in the negative direction, so I want negative 1. And I'm honestly not sure if I need to do this, but just in case, I'm going to go image x scale equals x scale, and I'm able to do this because I know that x scale already equals negative on wall direction, so I honestly could have even punched x scale in right there. But I'd prefer to do this because when I am editing this later, like when my project gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, I can just look at this line and I know exactly what it's doing. Whereas if I were to use the x scale variable, I would have to look for where I am setting that variable and then see what it's doing from there. This makes it easier to read and easier to edit later. And then I want to go y plus equals VSP and x plus equals HSP. But as it sits right now, this will get me jumping off the wall and moving in the proper direction. There's a couple things that this will not do. This will not give me the ability to mount walls while I'm in the wall jump state, which is something that I want. If I collide with a wall and I'm hitting a key in the right direction, I do want to be able to mount a wall while I'm in the wall jump state. I also don't want to be able to jump through walls. So if I am moving and I hit a wall while still in the wall jump state, I have nothing here to tell me not to just go right through it. And I definitely do want to have collisions in this state. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my default state and I'm going to grab my collision code and I'm just going to go cut. I'm going to delete it out of here and then I'm going to go player collisions. Then I'm going to go here. I'm going to create a new function. player collisions. And I'm going to paste all that code. So now instead of typing all of this out every single time that I want collisions, I can just do this. So now that I have that set up, I can go here and I can just be like player collisions. And now my collisions are in my wall jump state. But I also want to be able to mount walls. So I'm actually going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to grab this. So cut. I'm going to go here and function wall mount. And now the same thing, anytime that I have a state in my state machine where I want to be able to wall mount, all I have to do is call this function. So I'm going to minimize that. And I'm going to go wall mount. But the wall mount script calls for a key right and key left. So I need to add those inputs to this state. So I'm going to go key right and key left, copy. And that should give me the ability to wall mount, animate properly, jump off the wall, everything. So let's just run this project and make sure I haven't messed anything up. Oh yeah, see, I'm not wall mounting. Alright, the reason why I'm not wall mounting is when I cut out my wall mount code, I never called the wall mount function. Perfect. I'm able to jump and wall mount. And wall jump and the whole 9 yards. Let's see if I can wall mount after while I'm in the wall jump state. Alright, I can. And I can use it to get all the way up here. But the up seems slow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go create event, wall jump height. I'm going to set that to 7 instead. There we go. So I'm not a super big fan of the way that wall mounting looks. Like the animation, it looks kind of choppy when I first hit a wall. And I know a good way to fix that is honestly just to increase the speed of this animation. So I'm going to make it like 18. Yeah, see already, that looks way smarter. And I fell. Okay. So now that we have our wall mounting working, I can go to my room. And let's say I want to be able to mount every wall except this one. So I'm going to select on this. I'm going to go variables. Here where it says mountable, I'm just going to turn that off. And if I run the game now, I can no longer mount this wall, but I can still mount other walls. And let's go a little bit farther. Let's say I want to change this one on the fly. So I'm going to call this test wall. Legit, I'm just naming this instance test wall. I'm going to go back to my code. I'm going to open an event, and I'm going to go key pressed space. First, I'm going to make sure that the instance exists. If instance exists, test wall. If test wall dot mountable. So if it's mountable, test wall dot mountable equals false. Else test wall dot mountable equals true. See, I still can't mount it, but if I hit space, now I can. I can't. I can. I can't. I can. So there you have it. That is an in-depth tutorial on how to do some simple wall mounting and also have it be a variable wall mount so that you can choose what walls you mount and what walls you don't. If you have any questions about what I have done here, you can go ahead and comment those down below. I'm going to be releasing this video at the same time as I released my first community help video, where I had a fellow come to me with some issues that he was having with the wall mounting in my state machine, and I was having trouble helping him through text. So I just made a video to try to help him through what he was having troubles with. So if you do have questions about how to do this, maybe just take a quick look at that video. I'll put a link to it in the description down below. Maybe I helped him with what you're having issues with. But if you are having issues, like I said, comment them down below. I will absolutely do my best to help you. If you have any comments about what I've done today, or you have some tutorial suggestions, please comment those down below. I'm always looking for feedback and also tutorial suggestions. I really don't know what to make tutorials on, and it helps me if someone just tells me. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please give me a like and consider subscribing. It really helps me out. Other than that, that's all that I have for you guys today. I hope you guys are having a good one, and peace out.